What is up, everybody? He is Ira Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com, the ultimate Seminoles sports source. Promo code is Warchant30 at the bottom of your screen. I'm Aslan Hajavani, director of digital media for aforementioned website. We are here to talk about the 2021 football slate, which just dropped. But first, if you could hit that thumbs up button at the bottom, we would much appreciate that. So, Ira, Florida State gets a 2021 schedule. We already knew who they were playing and where. We just didn't know the whens kind of filled in. We do know a little bit. We found out, I guess, a day or two ago that the Florida game is going to be in Gainesville, so that's a bit of a bummer. But they do start off with Notre Dame. That's a non-con game at home. That's a big-time one right there. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and pull the whole shabam up here, and I guess just your first impressions when you saw this slate.
You know, it's basically what I think, you know, a lot of people have come to the same conclusion as you look at it. It's not too difficult to kind of parse. The first half of the schedule sets up really nicely, and which I think is good. I mean, we went into last season. If you rewind to a year ago at this time, we looked at the 2020 schedule and said, well, this is nice that they at least, you know, you opened up with Georgia Tech and you got some winnable games early to get some confidence. Of course, it didn't play out that way. So you kind of need to hedge what we say by remembering that. But the schedule does. The first half sets up pretty nicely where you could see a scenario where Florida State goes 4-1. I don't even know if it's out of the question to say maybe even 5-0, just because, you know, Notre Dame, it's the perfect spot to get Notre Dame if you were going to have to play Notre Dame in Mike Norvell's second season. They're replacing a ton of starters, the quarterback, offensive line. You know, you get them first game at home. So on a Sunday night, if there is full capacity, or anything close to that, should be a really cool environment. So from that standpoint, I think you got a chance against Notre Dame. I don't think that's a game you can't win when you look at all the players you brought in as transfers. And then from there, you know, that next 4 or 5 games, I mean, it's, you know, Jacksonville State should be a win at home. Obviously, Wake Forest is on the road, but they've, you know, that program is a good program. But I actually kind of think you might be better off playing them early than later. And then, you know, you get Louisville and Syracuse at home, 2 teams that, you know, again, are not sure wins because of where Florida State football is at the present time, but you like your chances. So, I mean, that's a stretch there, you know, where you could be 4-1, you might be 3-2. But I think you could go into the season seeing a scenario where you could even be 5-0. And for a Florida State team, and you made this point numerous times, just getting off to a strong start, you think would do a lot, not just for the players, but for the fan base, just kind of keeping people engaged.
Only one bye week, though, comes between North Carolina and UMass. I guess that then kind of pivots to what you think about the second half of this schedule, which looks a little bit more daunting.
Yeah, and you got the bye week comes in the middle of the Sam Howell Revenge Tour, which I think Florida State's actually printing up posters and T-shirts already to get ready for that. You got to play Sam Howell at North Carolina on October 9th, which obviously will be a challenge. Then you get a week off to prepare for Walt Bell, who is now the head coach at UMass, and his return trip to Doak Campbell Stadium. So, you know, I think a lot of people, when you look at that schedule and you see the bye week, and I had actually heard about this talking to some people around the program yesterday, the one thing they weren't really excited about with the schedule was getting the bye week before UMass. But you could also look at it like, you know, it gives you 2 weeks basically to prepare for Clemson. UMass is terrible. If you haven't paid attention to UMass football lately, that is a bad football program. And so that's a game, you know, you might be able to look ahead a little bit from a preparation standpoint for the coaching staff to that Clemson game. I don't know if 2 weeks matters, but from that standpoint, I think that's one positive. But yeah, as you said, I mean, the last month is the last 5-6 weeks is going to be a challenge. You know, I don't like, you know, Boston College isn't a team that should scare Florida State. They did show improvement last year under their new coaching staff. But the fact that it's late November, going up there right before you have to play Florida in Gainesville, I mean, that's not real. Doesn't look like a fun way to end the schedule. So really, I think that, you know, that NC State Miami combo at home, I mean, I think you have to win at least one of those, right? Just otherwise, you could be. I mean, you're looking at a really ugly end to the season. If you can beat NC State or Miami at home, and I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, I know Miami was a complete disaster of a game this past. Both of those teams blew you out on the road last season. But, you know, if this team is improved, if Mackenzie Milton is the guy that people expect. That these transfers come in. You're late in the season of Mike Norvell's second season. I really think it's important to win one of those two games, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Bailey Hockman's gone though, Ira, so we can breathe a little easier.
True.
So he's not coming back to Doak. But yeah, I mean, when you look at that, it's funny. You mentioned the Sam Howell revenge tour. I mean, Clemson, probably Dabo's got some, ill will in his mind there as well. And then those last three games, that's brutal, I think. When you're talking about the playing in the ACC, because you have your rival in Miami, you have your rival in Florida and Sandwich. I think Boston College with Jeff Hafley was so improved in year one. It's hard to imagine that they're going to take a step back or not be anywhere near as good as they were this past season. Then you have to go obviously up there in a cold weather game probably to take them on. That is a little bit daunting. But yeah, I mean, it just everything comes down to this beginning of this slate, man. And it's crazy. I mean, some people might roll their eyes if they're not Florida State fans tuning into our channel. You're talking about starting off 5-0, but with everything that Notre Dame lost, that's definitely reasonable. My thing though is, I think like if we go back to like 2014, there's some like little meme or line or whatever on the internet about like when people show you who they are, believe them. And like if we go back to 2014, like if you look at the way Florida State played in the first game of their season since like 2014, it was kind of a harbinger of things to come since then. At 15, they opened up with like Texas State or some nobody, I think. But otherwise, you think about 16 with Ole Miss, they looked erratic and inconsistent on defense, and that kind of proved to be the case later on that season. 17, the way they lost to Bama, and then they lost to NC State, and we thought it was weather and this and that. And 18, they come out sluggish against Samford in week 2, and it was early, long layoff. And man, if they can beat Notre Dame, there is no reason to feel that there's maybe something magical could happen this season, which sounds crazy coming from me. But I don't know if they lose to Notre Dame. I wonder what people are going to kind of hold on to if it's not like a competitive game that comes down to the last possession of the fourth quarter, because I feel like that week leading to Jacksonville State, it's not going to be a whole bunch of excitement.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, on the one hand, like again last season when you went to Georgia Tech, that Georgia Tech game, thinking, okay, this gives you a chance to kind of get some momentum going early in the season, and then with COVID and everything else, and then Florida State actually is as many things that went against them in that game, they still should have won it. They're up 10-0. James Blackman didn't play well. Obviously, the defense kind of just fell apart in the second half. But and so seeing that, and then looking ahead to a year later, it's almost sounds hard to wrap your mind around the idea that Florida State's going to go out and open a season by beating Notre Dame. But I do think this situation sets up as well as it could be. You knew you were going to be playing them for the opener. It's a Sunday night game, which I think is a good thing for Florida State. One thing that's kind of important about that is I think there was originally talk, or it might have originally been scheduled as a Monday game. And if we remember the Monday night opener against Virginia Tech, which was Willie Taggart's first game, that was not the atmosphere we all expected. As it turns out, a lot of people didn't really want to travel to Tallahassee on Monday night. A lot of the fans from South Florida or Atlanta or wherever, if they had to go back to work on Tuesday. So Florida State getting to open with that Sunday night game, I think is going to be a big deal for the crowd, and I think that should make for a much better environment.
Oh, it was electric. I thought Labor Day against. I'm being serious. I thought it was pretty palpable in Doak on Monday night against Virginia Tech.
It was a good environment. No, you're right. It was a good environment, but the crowd size wasn't what it was expected to be.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So maybe Sunday does help things out there a little bit. Just again, there's been so many new players brought in here, but I think even these new players, when you come to Florida State, you're still expecting to compete for championships, despite however poorly things have gone the last few seasons. Like if you don't win that first game, it is just so difficult. I think no matter what they say afterwards, and you make your biggest growth from week 1 to week 2, that's kind of what gets me concerned, because we've seen this team not do well in week 1 for the better part of 8 years, and it hasn't really been all that great. Well, I should say 8 years. Let's go to like 6 years. And it hasn't been all that great after week 1. So I think we will learn a lot about this team, obviously, from the jump. Because, the Georgia Tech game, they had a rain delay. They were rolling. It knocked them off their spot. But the defense did not perform all that well in the second half, and that kind of became the refrain for the rest of the season. But again, yeah, you bounce back Jacksonville State. Wake Forest, to me, still looks a little bit daunting. Louisville, they got themselves a transfer quarterback in Shai Werts from Georgia Southern. So in terms, again, man, the ACC, not the strongest football conference, but this schedule is not one of the easier ones in the conference, I would think.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to add to that Notre Dame game is the matchup there. If Florida State's defensive line, especially the defensive ends, are much improved, you'd like to think that Florida State should be able to get a pass rush. Notre Dame's offensive line, they're losing all those guys to the NFL, presumably, and they'll be breaking a new quarterback on the road. Now, of course, we said that going into the Georgia Tech game. Georgia Tech was playing a true freshman quarterback on the road in his first start, and he did well enough to win. So. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm just excited the fact that there's a schedule. There's talk right now. Florida State's going to have they're planning for full attendance. We'll see how that works out. Season tickets go on sale on Monday. So I'm curious to see how season ticket sales go, because that gives you an idea of kind of fan interest. And I think just kind of having the schedule, on paper, I think should give people some excitement.
Yeah, also on the Notre Dame front, we talk about the loss of players. I mean, they lost their defensive coordinator, Clark Lee, went to Vanderbilt. I think he took one of their top assistants. I think maybe the secondary coach went with him to Nashville. So they'll be breaking in a lot of things. Yeah, we did say about Georgia Tech, but I do think when you have a guy like probably Mackenzie Milton leading you at quarterback in week one, as opposed to, James Blackman, that definitely puts you in a much better spot. And we spoke to Mike Norvell on the podcast the other day, and he was championing the ability and the power of continuity on that staff. So, maybe another year together with the band, things work out a little bit better. But yeah, man, if they beat Notre Dame, again, if you're not a Florida State fan, you're watching this, and some of you are, it's like, what are you talking about, you crazy people? Did you see the game last year? But so much, I think, has changed. If you beat Notre Dame, rocket ship to the moon, Ira. Let's book the room at the Fountain Blue. We're going to the Orange Bowl at minimum. Yeah.
If you don't, and if it's a great game, I think fans can feel something good coming out of it, even if you don't win it. But if you don't play well at all, the challenge to this schedule is, you might be 4-1 or you might be 3-2, but none of those wins are really going to excite anybody too much. If you beat Wake Forest, even though it's a road game and they're a decent team, that's not going to get anybody excited. Jacksonville State obviously wouldn't. If you beat Louisville at home, even as bad as that game was last year, losing on the road, it's still not a game that's going to get people super excited, or Syracuse. So from that standpoint, from a record standpoint, you could come out of that first 5 games at 4-1 maybe. But I don't know if people are really going to believe that the program's come very far. And then you get into that, just a really difficult stretch. Now, North Carolina on the road, I don't think is a sure loss. The only games – I think the games that you would expect to be sure losses are Clemson and Florida. I don't know that I would say Miami at home is a sure loss because of the way they ended this past season. And I don't know that I would say a road game at North Carolina is a sure loss. Do you?
No, you beat North Carolina last season. They're obviously going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They'll probably actually have, 30,000-40,000 people at Kenan Stadium. So
they also lost, all their top playmakers on offense are gone. All those guys, except for Sam Howell. But they had some dynamic. Their running backs were awesome. The receiver was awesome, and those guys are all gone as well.
Yeah, I do like Miami buried at the bottom. As we've seen, that team they like to start hot. In recent years, they fizzle as things kind of come down the stretch. Who knows if De'Aaron King, who went down in their bowl game, would be able to play? Maybe at that point in the season he is, but he probably is going to be playing at later on the season. He won't have all the reps under his belt that he would otherwise. So. I guess that there's some solace in that, but man, just like Boston College and Florida, both on the road, back to back. Man, that would have been nice to put a bye week down there, or UMass somewhere in there. How does that? How much of that is out of their control? How much of it is in their control? Because I know last season before COVID came, I didn't like the fact that they had a really early bye between Boise, but I guess they wanted it there because of travel purposes. How much sort of say-so do they have in getting some of this stuff configured?
The way it works, from what I've been told, is the ACC presents their first go at it, and then basically with their first before the ACC does it, every school gets to kind of put in some requests, and they knew some dates were already set. Like that UMass game, I think when the game was scheduled, it was set for that date. Jacksonville State was already set by contract. Notre Dame was already set. Florida was already set. So then they're given those other 8 weeks, and for all the conference schools, they have to manage around what everybody else has. And then they send it to the schools. I don't know, within the last couple of weeks, and then the schools each get a little bit of right of refusal, or at least some question or suggestions that they would like to see differently. And then the conference office is kind of weighing it all. There was a time where you felt like Florida State probably carried the most weight in those conversations, but those days are probably long gone. And so, it's a combination of TV partners, what all the other schools need, and they try to make it work. But from what I understand, Florida State didn't come out of this process angry or feel like anything was terrible about it. The one thing I think they would have preferred differently would have been maybe that UMass game, not having a bye before UMass.
Yeah, and it's like, I wonder why they contracted that game on a date in October. That's
well, it was a weird situation from what I remember. They were kind of trying to schedule games, and there wasn't a lot of availability. There wasn't a lot for teams at the amount of money they wanted to pay, and when they. So I think that was part of it, and that's when UMass had that date available. But no, you're right. It is unusual. Usually you expect it either maybe week 2 or before the Florida game.
I don't know. Do you want to go through this? Let's maybe do like 2 scenarios. Let's do the fun scenario. You beat Notre Dame. Like, what happens from there, or how many of those games are coin flips? Like, I still think Wake and Louisville are coin flips. I don't know. I think Syracuse, you're probably hedged like 70-30 on that one, but I mean, if
you need to beat Syracuse, you need to beat that Syracuse team at all.
Yeah, absolutely. If they beat Notre Dame, Ira, I mean, 10 wins. 9?
Oh man!
And I'm Mr. Skeptic. I'm Mr. Cynic, man. But
I mean, everything would have to go your way. I mean, because I think I don't think anybody is rightfully going to predict Florida State's going to beat Florida or Clemson. So those are 2 losses. So you'd have to win all those coin flip games, which probably isn't likely.
Yeah, life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work
unless you have your dream season. But so yeah, I mean, I think it's a there's scenarios where they could win 9 or 10. I mean, I think win 8 or 9 to me is probably best case. But I mean, I think 7 and 5 is probably most realistic.
I just try to think about Louisville and North Carolina State. They're not 35 points better than Florida State is. They're just not. And we think these additions and their subtractions would help close that gap. But obviously to put a slam dunk and a big number on that, who knows? But yeah, Wake, Louisville. I don't know. I'm still not that scared of NC State, even though they took Florida State to the woodshed last year. I still think like Louisville, Wake Forest, those are 50-50 games. Miami, I think, is a 50-50 game. Boston College is probably, I don't know, 60-40 in their favor. But nonetheless, it's exciting. It's almost here. Like 220 days or so we're away from it, Ira. Can you feel it?
I can't wait. I cannot wait, Aslan. I'm excited. I'm excited for spring football. I mean, I'm just excited to see what this program looks like in a regular year. We haven't had a chance to see that. I mean, we can all debate whether or not Florida State handled the COVID hiatus well, or as well as other teams. You've seen some other first-year coaches that had a little more success. You saw some other first-year coaches that had less success. But I want to see what it looks like when they have a full year and a roster that they feel good about, transfers they feel good about, incoming players they feel good about. I just think we're going to get a better idea this season of what Mike Norvell can do. I don't know that last year was probably a fair representation.
Well, what else is going on over at warchant.com, Ira?
Well, I hope people
busy.
Yeah. I hope people read or watch, listen to your guys' interview with Mike Norvell from yesterday that people can find on the website. Good interview, about 20 minutes, 20 or more minutes with Mike Norvell and you and Corey. And then, more basketball coverage. I've got a story going up here shortly about Malik Osborne and Raquan Gray and how Florida State how well they rebounded the ball, how well they've been rebounding the ball recently. It's crazy. Those losses to Clemson and UCF, which are 2 smaller teams, they got out rebounded in both those games, lost those games. When they took that break, they came back and they were just killing people on the boards. Last night against Miami, it was like 43-25, I think, a rebounding edge. And so I think that's been a big thing. But Malik Osborne and Raquan Gray both had double-doubles in that game, which was kind of cool. So we'll have a story up about that. There's some recruiting developments coming up. I think later today, Florida State might get some good news on a player down the road. And then we'll have more football content coming, both in terms of looking at this team and what it looks like in the schedule, but then also some more hot boards. Michael's got more hot boards coming for the 22 class. I know you love the hot boards.
I need a hot board. There's a hot board. There's a hot board. I'm there for it, man. All right. Very well. Awesome. Ira, thanks so much for your time, everybody. If you could hit the thumbs up on the way out, if you haven't done so already, we would appreciate it. We'll catch you over on the website, warchant.com.